I'm feeling good.
Hi, this is Attorney Davis responding to your comment. And as I mentioned before in the original video, yes, statistically speaking, white people are the biggest beneficiary of welfare programs. And I just want to drop some knowledge on you. Not on you specifically, but on the original comment, the person that posted it. All right, so a little bit about me is that prior to becoming an attorney, my trade actually is economics. I'm an economist by trade and education-wise. In fact, I was going to work on Wall Street prior to becoming an attorney, but I wound up becoming an attorney. Now that that's out the way, let's get to the raw statistics. All right, so white people are the biggest beneficiaries of welfare. White people make up about just about a little bit over 40% of welfare, being recipients of welfare. Another 25.7% is made up by African American. Approximately 10.3 are Hispanic. 2.
Guess which race has the highest percentage of people on Section 8? Guess which race gets the most abortions? Guess which race? White people. You don't have to fucking guess. White people. White people, white women get the most abortions in America. White people are the majority race receiving Section 8 food stamps and everything else. White people are at the top. Meanwhile, the government pushes out the propaganda of like the whole welfare queen stamina, and people let racism and the idea that black people are low-life beggars from the government. Y'all let that cloud your mind from reality. White people get more assistance from our government than any other race of people in America. Period. And then on top of that, why do people get mad about the fact that the government provides assistance? What the fuck else should them bitches do? Why would they not help? Why would they not help?
For full disclaimer, I'm only speaking on my experience working in tax credit. And she is absolutely right, because let me tell you something. They know how to work the system. They know how to work the system in their favor. I'm going to tell you, they put their stuff in a trust. If you do not have a trust, I suggest you get a trust. Especially out here in California, I worked in probate. And if you don't have your stuff in a trust, your stuff will be held up in probate for 5 years. So what they do is they get a trust, they put their assets in a trust, then they can go apply for social services and they can apply for Section 8 and get Section 8. Just like that, because those said assets are not in their name. Let me tell you, I worked on several properties, the tax credit, and you know what? I had one resident, she was paying $87 a month in rent. She drove a Benz and she had a whole apartment full of Z Gallery furniture. That's high-end furniture, and she was white. She knew how to work that system to get whatever she wanted. Had another resident, she paid $67 a month in rent, again on Section 8. She knew how to work the system too. I had residents that was on this tax credit property with Section 8. I think I had at least like 50 residents. I would say their ranges from paying rent off of Section 8 was between, like I said, $67 all the way up to the max was $300. Because Section 8, what they do is they pay above the market rent on an apartment when you get it. And a lot of those people who get those vouchers, they never leave. I believe that was created for you to, get a hand up, so when you do get stable and you're making your own money that was supposed to be reserved for somebody else that can use it too when they're having a hard time. But no, they abuse the system. And I'm not saying all abuse the system, but a lot abuse the system. And I literally, when new housing comes in, especially out here where I live, they're camping out 2-3 days just to get on that list because they can keep more money in their pocket. But this is how they work the system. Get you a trust. Put your assets in that trust. And you can get all the benefits you want to as well. They need to do something about that because people who really need it can't get it.
White people have had a 2 to 3 time generational head start access to government assistance. When programs like the Social Security Act and welfare were introduced, largely Black and brown people were excluded. How did they exclude us? Racist practices and policies. They quite literally said that if you are a domestic laborer, you can't get this. And who made up 70% of domestic laborers? Black women. They were like, oh, if you work in agriculture, you can't get this. Who made up that workforce? Hispanic people, specifically Mexican Americans, and Black people. So for decades, white women were sitting on their tail at home, taking care of their kids, collecting checks from the government. The same thing that y'all accuse Black women of doing, y'all have been doing it for decades, damn near a century. And even to this day, the largest recipient of government resources, white people. There's no shame in using those resources, right? Like, they're there for a reason. But because Ronald Reagan got his saggy ass up there and called Black women welfare queens, y'all have been running with this narrative that Black people are sucking the system dry when quite literally white people have been doing that for damn near.
So, what have we here?
Let's talk about who really benefited from welfare in America, because for decades, they made us the face of welfare. But the truth is, white America has been the biggest benefactor of government handouts since the inception of this country. And today, we're going to set the record straight. The original welfare program was America. This country was built on free Black labor. For over 200 years, white wealth was accumulated off the backs of enslaved Africans, people who were never paid, never compensated, and never made whole. While we were working for free, white slave owners were passing down land, businesses, and wealth for generations. And after slavery ended, guess who got the payouts? Not us, them. In D.C. alone, slave owners received up to $300 per free slave for their lost property. That's reparations for the oppressors. Number 2, the Homestead Act of free land, but not for us. In 1862, the government gave away 270 million acres of land for free. That land went to over 1.6 million white families. It was a generational wealth seed planted by the federal government, but Black folks were yet excluded again. You needed access, resources, and protection to claim that land, and we weren't given any of that. Meanwhile, we're out here trying to survive off of the promised 40 acres and a mule that never came. Number 3, the GI Bill. Same war, different treatment. When our men came home from World War II, they came back heroes. At least they should have been. The GI Bill was supposed to provide education, housing, and business support for veterans. But guess what? Black soldiers were denied access, turned away from colleges, and redlined out-of-home loans. Meanwhile, white vets built the suburbs, bought homes, and sent their kids to school on the government dime. Number 4, FHA and VA loans, creating the white middle class. From the 1930s to the 1960s, 98% of FHA loans were to white families. That's how white America built their middle class. Black people were locked out through redlining, racial covenants, and flat-out discrimination. We paid taxes into those programs too, but we didn't get the benefits. Number 5, the New Deal, but not for the Negro. Social Security, unemployment insurance, minimum wage protections, all part of Roosevelt's New Deal, right? Except domestic and agricultural workers were excluded. Who were most of those workers? You guessed it, Black people. That was no accident. That was policy. And number 6, modern day corporate welfare. Now check it out. Today we still see it. Billion-dollar corporations getting tax breaks, subsidies, and bailouts. Meanwhile, guess what? They telling y'all Black people to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. We never even had the boots. They got the boots, the blueprint, the land, the loan, and the legislation to support it. We paid the highest cost, contributed the most labor, and received the least return. Yet we still wait on our reparations while they've been receiving theirs for centuries. So the next time somebody tries to talk slick about who's really living off the government, remind them, black folks didn't fail. We were locked out. But here's the thing. We're not victims. We're visionaries. And now that we know the truth, we build smarter, we grow stronger, and we take back what's ours by any legal and economic means necessary. Stay woke, wealthy, outstanding, knowledgeable, and impactful.
So I posted about white folks on food stamps, and one thing I kept seeing was that welfare was created for white people. I knew that it was created during the New Deal, so I did some more research because I didn't really know the whole story, and I thank you guys for responding and helping me learn stuff. So during the Great Depression is when we saw the beginning of things like Social Security, unemployment insurance. But here's the kicker. When Franklin Roosevelt built those programs, he had to make deals with Southern Democrats in Congress, the same folks who were big fans of Jim Crow, to get the support of these racist white Southern politicians. The programs were designed to exclude farm workers, domestic workers, jobs held overwhelmingly by Black, Latino, and Indigenous people. So right from the start, Black and brown families were pushed out of benefits so that white people could get them. Then we move forward to the 1960s, and there's this war on poverty. It finally opened up welfare programs more broadly, and that's when food stamps became permanent. Well, permanent, we don't know what Trump's going to do to them, but they lasted a long time. And guess what? The minute more Black and brown families started accessing this help, the politics shifted. Welfare got a new image and a new target. By the 1980s and 90s, with Ronald Reagan and his gang, they pushed the welfare queen myth. That's a racist dog whistle meant to turn public opinion against safety nets by blaming Black women for poverty that white policies created. That's the truth, you guys. So yes, welfare was built for white people, and when others finally got in the door, they tried to burn the house down. If you want to blame the right people, you gotta get curious.
You know, thanks for all the comments you put on this post. This post, I totally forgot I did this until you brought it back up. But I need the deflection to stop, you know? Because this was about YT women, not Hispanics, okay? YT women are the OGs of welfare queens, okay? And if you looked up and Googled it yourself, you will find out that the data is out there, and it is broken down by groups of people who receive the programs like SNAP and TAFT, right? So YT women are 43% of the welfare recipients. Yes, they are YT, they are white. Hispanics, which range from multiple people, not just Mexicans, are 26. And then there's Black people at 23. Why does this matter? Because, honey, the truth shall set you free. And white women were the original stories. The infamous welfare queen stereotype is based on a person named Linda Taylor. Look her up. She's a white woman accused of welfare fraud in the 1970s, before the stereotype took a racial overturn and tried to blame it on Black women. Hispanics are often used as a distraction, but they are neither the stereotype nor the source. The majority lies in the white culture. I already told you, though, highlighting that actually the statistics that they are giving and the way that you're speaking, you're trying to deflect it from the common denominator. Stop putting other people in front of who was the reason of this whole program. They husbands was skipping out, and they couldn't survive without some form of income, so the government made it so. White women were the actual origins of welfare queen, okay? Today, white recipients make up the largest share of welfare. Hispanic accounts, again, come in like 26. Black accounts, 23%, not the major groups. So let's focus on the story. It's actually about who was the original OG welfare queen, and stop trying to rewrite history. It's not going to work because Google is free. Okay, and I'm going to do that story about Linda Taylor because she's a mess. And when I say mess, I mean she is really something else.
From welfare queen to dean's list, the lie versus the legacy, aka you forgot to adjust your stereotype. They called her lazy, dependent, and a drain on society. Today, she has more degrees than anyone else in the country. Let's talk about black women. The term welfare queen was born out of political manipulation in the 1970s and the 80s, especially under President Ronald Reagan. The image, a black woman with kids, driving a Cadillac, scamming the system. The truth, one extreme and distorted fraud case, blown up into a racialized moral panic used to gut welfare and blame poverty on choices. It worked. The stereotype stuck, and it's still echoed today in how black women are portrayed in the media, politics, and policy debates. But while that lie calcified, black women were out there doing something else entirely. According to the National Center for Education, Statistics, and multiple studies, black women enrolled in college at a higher rate than any other group by gender and race. They earn more associates, bachelor's, and master's degrees per capita than any other demographic group in the US. How sweet. They started businesses faster than anyone else in America. They've been the backbone of voting blocks, especially in the South, and often deciding elections. And they've done it all while facing racism, misogyny, and policy systems that weren't built for them, but somehow survived them. So while the stereotype stuck in the 20th century, black women upgraded themselves in the 21st. Not only no one notified them of the narrative. When a system labels you as a problem, but you outperform it anyway, that's not survival. That's excellence in spite of design. So sweet. Follow for more truth that deserves the mic, not the slander. Peace out.
The welfare queen became a frequent theme of Reagan campaign events and radio addresses. Even today, the term welfare queen brings to mind an African-American woman sitting home, having babies, and collecting checks. The true story of the woman Reagan was describing is a little different. The Chicago welfare queen was a woman named Linda Taylor, though no one knows if that was her real name since she used more than 30 aliases. In addition to defrauding the government through various elaborate welfare schemes, Linda Taylor is also believed to have stolen babies from hospitals to sell them and is suspected of having murdered at least 2 female acquaintances. So, far from a lazy grifter, Linda Taylor was actually a very sophisticated and very dangerous criminal. Oh, and according to the 1930 census records, she was white. Back to Martin Gillen's research. From 1970 through 1990, black Americans continued to make up roughly 60% of representations of poverty in the media, even though they seldom made up more than 30% of America's poor. There were exceptions, though, as in 1982 and 1983, when pictures of white families suddenly spiked all the way up to 70%. What happened in 82 and 83? The worst recession in a generation, combined with threatened cutbacks to social programs by the Reagan administration. Suddenly, middle-class families were falling into poverty with less of a safety net to help them. And who did editors choose to feature in photos to generate sympathy for these newly poor families? White families. As soon as the recession ended, journalistic focus returned to stories of wasteful spending and portrayals of poor urban black families. Poverty in America went back to being black. Why does this matter? Because poverty in America isn't a uniquely black problem. To this day, African American families make up less than 30% of America's poor and receive only about a third of government spending on poverty programs. 70% of our spending goes to white and Latino families. Yet when we think about helping the poor, we think of handouts to African American mothers with multiple kids and no husbands living in the inner city. Why? Because those are the images we've been shown over and over. And here's the sad reality of lingering racism in America. The more we think of poverty as a black problem, the less we want to help. It isn't us, after all, it's them. And very old tropes about African Americans being lazy and irresponsible, remember the vagrancy laws, rear their ugly heads to make us less compassionate about America's poor. and as Christians, called time and time again in Scripture to care for the poor, this is nothing less than tragic. Third question, and this one's short. Why do you say we did these things?
Take a walk with me back in time where we revisit true American history. This American history will not be taught in schools. This American history is the history of the white welfare queen. This series is intended for Black entertainment only. White viewer discretion is advised. Now, as we all know, the food stamp program was implemented in 1939 for white folks. If they fit income requirements, they were given the option to buy $1 in food stamps, and the government would give them an additional 50 cents in food stamps to purchase surplus items that were marked at the store as surplus. And as you already know, they had to make at least $33 every 2 weeks. But what no one ever talks about is the first case of food stamp fraud. Now, this isn't talked about enough because this, my friend, falls under the category of food stamp fraud within the history of the United States. Yes, unfortunately, less than 6 months after the USDA implemented the first federal food stamp initiative, a retailer named Nick Solzano was caught of mischarging customers. So your boy Nick pled guilty to federal charges that he accepted food stamps in exchange for goods that were not authorized as surplus commodities. Nick, along with 3 other men and 3 other women, were all charged with accepting food stamps for items that were not surplus items. They weren't even edible. One of them accepted food stamps for a fucking fur coat. This took place October 1939. The incident was publicized as the first known food stamp fraud case ever in the United States. Yes, sir, there's a first time for everything. But from the looks of it, anything that has to do with the federal government and federal government welfare programs, first has always been white people.
Walked in one by one, some hung their heads, others wore their feelings right there on their t-shirts. Today, the Manatee County Sheriff's Office announced an undercover operation they've been working on for months, resulted in more than 100 arrest warrants.
A woman's going viral after saying her food stamps dropped from $4,400 to just $38.
My food stamps went from $4,400 in food stamps every month to $38. What am I supposed to get with $38 with 6 kids? How the hell am I supposed to support my kids on $38 in food stamps? Not to mention our disability checks on hold. Our Section 8, my rent isn't getting paid tomorrow. So I have to come up with $1,100. Okay? I am allergic to work. I can't work. I refuse to work. The whole reason I had kids was the amount of government benefits that you get for one child. And now, with the dependent age being 7 and younger, none of my kids are dependents now. None of them, because they're all older than 7. So how am I supposed to live? How do I feed my kids on $38? This is not okay. Not okay.
The gag is Ronald Reagan and the American media used Linda Taylor's crimes as a reason to stereotype a whole community. The Chicago Tribune wrote an article about Miss Taylor in 1974 and coined the term welfare queen. Ronald Reagan came across this article and for years used it as a talking point in his presidential campaign to push his anti-poor, anti-government rhetoric and demonize the black community for abusing the welfare system. When 1, Linda Taylor was clearly a mentally ill woman who engaged in more than just welfare fraud, and 2, statistics show that the majority of people who benefit from government assistance are white. State governments all over the U.S. went on to aggressively pursue welfare fraud in black communities, placing $100,000 bonds on petty crimes and pushing for jail time. The entire process became belittling. Welfare agents, usually white women, would come to women's houses unannounced to check and see if they had a man around or any new household items that would make them ineligible for aid. So much happened in the 70s. The civil rights movement had just ended, gas shortages, kidnappings. Some would say the government used the financial instability to pull the black men out of their home, but that's allegedly. Check out the movie Claudine. It does a great job of telling this story.
Oh, you thought it was for black people. You thought it was for black people. And yet the welfare system originated for white people. It's always been for white people. And since white folks are the majority and those who happen to be white presenting receive more food stamps, cash assistance, Social Security, SSI, SSA, SSD, and any federal programs that are involved in any state, county, and district that they're in the United States. Don't play with me, honey. I'm not the one. And let's talk about those baby daddies who are going around swing-ding-ling and multitude baby mamas and not married to half these women and going around and creating more children so that they can get more food stamps, cash assistance, and bounce between the one for one baby mama to the other. Oh, we know what white folks do. No one's saying that doesn't happen in other communities, but predominantly is your community. Because we know how white men work. We absolutely know how white men operate. Because we know how you white men work very well. Because you go around screaming and shouting that black men have baby mama dramas. And they have multitudes of baby mamas. And that's what they create is single motherhood. Let me say that again. White men commit single motherhood. And even you motherfuckers who are married. Those women are married but single. Because half the time you ain't doing your shit. And they're doing the work. And since those related programs, which has been documented and proven, most likely have been given to welfare forms of white women more than any other demographic, you benefit. You guys always benefited. From the lowest of low to the poorest of poverty, to upper middle class people who receive state-funded money, federal dollars, cash, and even items paid for by the state, given to them when it should be going to lower class families. But we see them rich bitches walk away with state-funded money from childcare to state programs. We know how easily and often mediocre white people get welfare. One thing about the system we know, they will help you and deny us before anything. You should find somewhere safe to play. Black, brown, and indigenous and BIPOC communities will eat you for filth every time because you're locusts. Everywhere you go, you destroy everything you touch.
78% of black husbands were in their homes married to the mother of their children when they started the social engineering of the welfare state. Fast forward 50 years, 78% of black children are being raised in single-headed households. This is destruction personified.
Without further ado, I would like to introduce you to the woman who goes down in history as the #1 welfare queen. This woman was the first food stamp recipient in the history of the United States of America, and it is written in stone with the Department of U.S. Agriculture. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to this biatch, Mabel McFiggins. Yes, Mabel McFiggins was the very first food stamp recipient in the history of the United States of America. Yes, I said it. Mabel was the first person to receive food stamps in the United States. Mabel lived in Rochester, New York. On May 16, 1939, she became the first recipient of assistance from the food stamp program. It was called FSP back then. Mabel was an unemployed factory worker who had been on relief for 3 years. Don't let us need no relief. We have to pull ourselves up by the fucking bootstraps. That white woman's participation in the food stamp program marked the beginning of a crucial social safety net program designed to address both widespread unemployed and agricultural surpluses during the Great Depression. The program aimed to help those in need, white people, and to stimulate the economy by encouraging the purchase of surplus foods. And yet the USDA does acknowledge Mabel McFiggin as the first recipient of the program, opening the floodgates for white welfare queens in America. Oh my God, look what they were doing. All these men in line for food stamps. You ought to be ashamed of yourselves. This is way before they made black single mothers beg for food stamp and imposed a man in the house law. Tax dollars going down the fucking drain. Looks like the men were the food stamp handlers back then. And look at them gladly producing food stamps for white households. Did you know that back then they sold food stamps? Yes, the federal government sold food stamps to black households. If you can afford $33 every 2 weeks, then you are allotted food stamps. They would sell you 50 cents on the fucking dollar. Now, mind you, a lot of black households could not afford the $33 every 2 weeks. Therefore, they could not get food stamps. They did not qualify because they did not have enough to buy them.
Now that you can buy food stamps, aren't you able to get more food for your family?
I can't buy them every 2 weeks because I don't have the money. I don't have the $33 every 2 weeks. I don't have nowhere to get it from. My husband don't make but $3.50 a day for the city. And that you don't make over $22 or $23 a week.
But you trot up your ass in black people's comment sections on TikTok being racist as fuck with an opinion of their financial statuses as if black people don't have jobs. You call black women welfare queens when you got Queen Food Stamp McFiggin right here. The first mutated industrial-aged moth to receive federal benefits from the fucking government.
So hey, as a black woman, and some black women or most black women are understanding when I say this, you know how you can look at somebody, being a black woman or a black person, and you can look at somebody and no matter what shade of skin tone they have, you can see like something's going on there. It's more than white passing. Okay, let's talk about the welfare queen. You ready? I'm not saying she black, but honey, it's something up in there. Look at this picture and then we'll talk. So y'all want to hear about Linda Taylor, right? The real welfare queen, the real one that got caught with welfare fraud, right? The one woman who identified as white that the government decided to paint her a different color. But were they wrong? No. See, let's get into it, because y'all and whoever's the hit dogs, they will holler. Y'all keep on throwing around welfare queens like it was made for black women. Go look it up. It's very documented. This was made for white women. You know, the ones that the husbands decided to flew the coop. Those ones. You know, the original welfare queens was out there like it was like in any given Sunday. But this one I want to talk about, Linda Taylor, born as Martha Lewis White. Let that last name sink in. So now listen, this woman had more identities than your cousin twice removed on the third side of your daddy granddaddy. You know, she got plenty of excuses. She passed for black, Latina, Native American, Asian, and of course her top one was white. Sis was out there shape-shifting before Marvel even was cool. You hear me? It all depends on what the day was and how the wind blew. One day she was a poor black woman collecting benefits. The next day she was a dignified white woman up in the court collecting benefits. But here's the funny thing in it. She identified as white. Legally, on her birth certificate, this woman is white. And in society, this woman is white. She claimed whiteness whenever it benefited her the most. But she was also able to shapeshift. So how did she end up being the face of the black stereotype? Don't you wonder that? Like, how could this woman be that? Oh, Ronald Reagan. You know, they say he never said her name, never said her race, but described the woman as a woman in Chicago who used 80 different names, 30 different addresses, and collected over $150,000 in welfare. So she was many faces. They had to catch up to get her, right? It was her, all of those aliases. And it made the media eat that up like, right? So they took this white passing scam and turned it into a boogie woman of the black womanhood. Still researching her story, like there's got to be a documentary on this woman. And black women today are still battling that crazy stereotype that a legalized white woman, and when I say legalized, that means legally she is classified as white. Okay, created. Meanwhile, white women to this day are the largest group on welfare. They get to float under the radar like it's none of their business. But I digress. When Walmart shoppers said, oh yeah, they come in here a lot. They come real early so nobody can recognize that they on welfare. True story, right? So the welfare queen didn't come from the hood. She came from the white world. She wore many faces of many races. And the system just blamed it on somebody else. What y'all think?
Hey guys, it's Queen TJ. Welcome back into your timeline this morning. This came across my timeline and I have a few things to say, really 3. Number 1, duh. Number 2, black folks have been in this, okay? If you see what ethnicity has the largest population of welfare recipients in the U.S., it would be ding, 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 white Americans. Black folks been doing that. Number 3, don't believe everything the media tells you. We're not rapists, criminals, thieves, whores, uneducated. We're actually educated, ambitious, and always challenging the status quo, hence the removal of affirmative action. But we're still coming for it all. As always, TikTok, stay woke.
My whole house is on Medicaid. My husband, me, our baby daughter. Okay, we're all on Medicaid. Without Medicaid, I wouldn't be able to have the birth control in my arm that I have. Without Medicaid, I wouldn't be able to have the antidepressants that I have at no cost to me. Without Medicaid, I wouldn't be able to go to therapy to continue to be the mom I am to the 3 kids and 2 separate houses that I have to do. Without Medicaid,
2 separate houses.
My daughter wouldn't be able to go and get her vaccines and go and get all of the things that she needs as an 18-month-old baby. Without Medicaid, my husband wouldn't be able to go and get the medications that he needs and the treatment that he needs for his disability. Without Medicaid, not a single person in my house would have health care. We are low income. Our only income is my husband's SSI. We're on food stamps. We use food pantries. Okay? Without Medicaid, we would never be healthy. And for us, it's not even like body. It's all mental. For my husband, for me, and then we have a baby who needs Medicaid for vaccines, who needs Medicaid for... I already have 2 children who are diagnosed with autism. So what if she ends up getting diagnosed with autism? We need Medicaid. We need Medicaid. And if you live in America, everybody deserves free healthcare. That's it. I just love you. Have a good day.
Where are we as a society where we're allowing individuals like this person to consistently move around the United States of America, legitimately adding nothing to society except consistently being a victim and basically leeching off of society? So, for example, when this recent election went on, people were seriously mad at me. They look at the color of my skin and they're like, how dare you not want to vote for Kamala Harris, who wants to raise her taxes so more of these people can basically exist? Guys, no. Absolutely glad that Trump got this big, beautiful bill worked out. I definitely hope that all of these individuals start working and start contributing to society immediately. And I mean immediately. And the crazy part about it is, guys, Trump is not even asking for a lot here. For those of us who run our own businesses and have to work at least 20 hours every single day to make sure that our business is healthy and functional. So we can get to the point, let's say, where we have to now throw a gigantic portion of money away to keep these people specifically sustained here, right? Now, absolutely nothing against someone who absolutely needs help. I have no problem helping someone that actually needs help. Able-bodied individuals, under no circumstances, need to be attached to any of these government-funded programs, and specifically for anything long-term. You can absolutely go get a job, work, get off of this, all right, and become a functioning member of society. Now, your husband who's on disability, that's a different scenario here, guys, right? I under no circumstance want any of these individuals removed. And luckily, if you actually read the big, beautiful bill, got off of social media for a moment, you'll kind of realize that this has nothing to do with them. Okay? It's all about her. Okay? It's all...
Her name was Linda Taylor, and she was identified by the Chicago Tribune in 1974 as a person who had committed welfare fraud while driving fancy cars, including a Cadillac, and very quickly after that she was given the nickname the Welfare Queen. And it was a nickname and a stereotype that really very quickly blew up.
You know, it was a Chicago paper that gave her that nickname, but it's really Ronald Reagan on the campaign trail that makes that phrase such a household idea.
In Chicago, they found a woman who holds the record. She used 80 names, 30 addresses, 15 telephone numbers to collect food stamps, Social Security, veterans benefits for 4 non-existent deceased veterans' husbands, as well as welfare. Her tax-free cash income alone has been running $150,000 a year.
In the 70s, she was coded as being black. People perceived welfare recipients at that point as being black, but some of the first stories about her noted that she could change her identity by changing a wig, that she could be black or white or Latina or Filipina. And this was seen as just another example of her deviousness. But as I found in my research, her history with race is far more complicated and in many ways sad. She was born in the Deep South and was rejected by her white relatives due to her, mixed race identity. She was somebody who was forced to pass because of the way growing up as a black person in a white family. In the South, it was illegal for her to be black in certain circumstances.
Do you think that this welfare queen idea would have stuck nearly as much if she had presented as a white woman or was just a white woman?
I think that she was the right person at the right place at the right time, or depending on your vantage, the wrong person in the wrong place at the wrong time. I think this idea of the welfare queen was something that was so powerful and such a strong message politically. And you can see that in how this, she was arrested for kidnapping in Chicago. She was accused of murder. But all of that information got left out and sanded away. That's not something that Reagan ever mentioned, certainly.
Welfare queen, who actually benefited from welfare. I know some of you know this, just like I do, but I was waiting for this to come around. I've been holding out. Okay, here we go. Ain't no holding back. Let's get into this myth of the welfare queen. Y'all know it's a stereotype. Invented by Ronald Reagan. Yes, honey, 1980s. This image was about, hold on, I need some tea. The tea is that this was unemployed black women scamming the government, living luxury off of your hard-worked money, your tax dollars. This is so hilarious, and I hear it all the time, but y'all, the tea is real. The tea is piping hot. Who is it? Who benefited from this system? Yeah, we about to find out. But if I told you that this story was never rooted in truth, it was never rooted in truth. You know why? Because the welfare system wasn't even created for black people. That's right. Let me tell you what I heard when I was even young about this. Wait, do y'all know the Umbrella Academy? Okay, I'm about to be her. One of my favorite actresses. I heard a rumor that the history they don't teach you, welfare programs in the United States, was initially designed for white women, specifically white housewives. I'm sorry, but white housewives who only had to be mothers. They're unemployed. They're not working. Now don't come for me, because being a mother is already hard, taking care of the household and your kids and extracurricular activities. And if you're on a PTA, girl, let me give you your flowers, but this is the truth. I just said, okay. So during the Great Depression and years to follow, programs like Aid to Dependent Children, later known as Aid to Families with Dependent Children, or AFDC, were created to support white women whose husbands had abandoned them. That's right, abandoned them. That means they left for a new model. Doesn't that sound familiar? Human race, right? I told y'all. Or died. or couldn't provide. Or couldn't provide. Where have we heard this from? It was a safety net for them and their children, rooted in the idea of preserving the ideal white nuclear family. Imagine that shit. If everybody thought about us being a human race instead of a division race, you would know you got the same damn problems. Nothing different, but you have to put a false narrative on to be relevant or to be superior. And I'm not talking about you current times, but I'm talking about the past times, so y'all get it. Okay, let's continue. But as more women of color, and yes, black women, began to access these programs in the 1960s and 70s during the civil rights era, public perception of welfare started to shift. Ain't that about it? So suddenly the face card flipped, and it wasn't like the tool to protect families. It was painted as a program of being exploited by lazy, undeserving individuals. Isn't that crazy, people, don't you think? Who really benefited from this welfare? Especially at the time that Reagan made this myth famous. You hear me? Famous. The 1980s, the majority of people receiving welfare were white Americans. You want me to repeat that for you? I've already knew this. You can Google it. It's still going to say white America has been on the welfare in bigger numbers, but I'm going to keep going. So not only was it majority white Americans getting this welfare, it was majority white women, and that's the truth. Black people have always received less welfare aid than any other racial group. And please don't say, oh, it's not true because my friend, or I heard, or I was behind a girl in a line. Stop it and Google it, okay? And even they tried to scapegoat the primary user. You know, try to cover it up and say them, when it's really you. So why are we standing on business today? Because I'm tired of the lies. Like I told y'all, I'm tired of the lies, and the truth shall set you free. Can I get a soul clap? Because the plan is never just about race. It's about creating division. You know, these stereotypes that are pent up against us, can't stand it. And the more I dig, the more truth comes out to it. That you are creating division, you are creating insecurities, and you are putting fear into people's hearts. When the true answers is right here, y'all. Look it up. So here's your homework. Take a moment to reflect this history. I know, yes. Like, who benefited from it? Like, what do you believe? I told you to do your homework so you can check. Like welfare queens. They did that as a distraction. They always doing something over here, but look over here. Like, think about this day and time. For all of you that are blessed to be at-home moms, kudos to you, because it's more than just being a mama. That is a whole 9 to 5, sometimes 24-hour job, okay? And can you think about somebody calling you lazy because you're technically unemployed, but taking care of your kids, taking care of the house, doing all the emotional support, being a psychiatrist, being a social worker, all of this at home, and that is labeled as lazy. Imagine it. Okay, let's stay curious, y'all.
Government assistance was made for white people. The fact that the programs are made in like 1935, like in the 1930s, says it all right there, given the fact that black people were not even considered people under the law at that time. But I've really been doing some more research and reading, and I read an article and they were talking about how like up until like the 60s or 70s, black people really could not qualify for government assistance. And that is absolutely disheartening, being that now it hasn't even been 100 years later that black people are now the face of all racial stereotypes regarding government assistance in Section 8. Meanwhile, these same programs were never even made for us. Meanwhile, black people had to jump through hoops to get qualified. Meanwhile, people talk about black fathers not being in the home, and these same government institutions were not wanting the men to be there. Like, what the fuck?
So first, the face of poverty in reality looks very different than some people's perception.
Well, let me put a finer point on it. They think poverty is black and Latino and Hispanic people in this country, but poverty also includes a lot of white people in America.
Ooh, you thought you got me there, didn't you? Except you missed something. If you look conveniently above the information that you posted but still decided not to tag me in, you would have noticed this part. Look at that. I could play this game too, though. Let's go on over to the census. In this piece called, Who is Receiving Social Safety Net Benefits? Let's check out this tool and what it discovered. Well, what do you know? Look at that. Area of race. Look at that. met. Very interesting. But again, none of this is an indictment against the people that you want it to be. Social safety net benefits are there to make sure that people have their basic needs met. That means that when people are working 1, 2, 3 jobs, they still can't get the basic needs met. That's an indictment against our system, against employment, against wages, not an indictment against people. See, you're too much of a racist to even realize that. Also, I doubt that we would have these programs if white.
Messages from 2017 appear to show Brett Favre was helped by former Mississippi Governor Phil Bryant to raise money for a new volleyball stadium at the University of Southern Mississippi, his alma mater, and where his daughter plays the sport, as part of a larger welfare fund scheme in what's been referred to as the largest public fraud case in the state's history. Favre reportedly worked with Bryant to funnel at least $5 million of the state's welfare funds towards building the stadium. This is not the first reported instance of Favre, who has not been criminally implicated, benefiting from welfare funds, as he had previously paid back money he received.
Yo, I just seen Shorty on here talking about, I think her name is Faint the Saint, talking about the Jews getting everything. Y'all just realizing that? Are y'all just figuring that out? They always do that. The wives don't marry the husbands legally, and then they turn around, they go get WIC, they go get food stamp, they go get everything, especially in New York. I think they put them on the Section 8 list as soon as they turn 18. They get all the apartments, they put them all in one building, they get everything. When I say everything, everything. And then when you go to the food stamp office, there's somebody back there just for the Jews. Just for the Jews alone. You be sitting there and then they get called first and you're like, what? They get all the nice apartment building complex on Section 8, on housing. They get all that nice stuff. They get the, for one, their husbands put them on payroll, getting paid $250 a week, and then they work at their dad's businesses, not making no money. They don't take their husband's name, so they end up with everything. And then they be like, oh, black people be the one that get all the welfare and the Section 8 and the food. No, it's the Jews. It's the Jews. Y'all are just realizing this? It's the Jews? Boy.
President Roosevelt for the win again for his creation of the white welfare queen in public housing. The first low-income housing project was called the 𝒲𝒶𝓎 Homes. 𝒲𝒶𝓎 Homes was located in Atlanta, Georgia. These were some of the buildings of the white welfare queen low-income housing 𝒲𝒶𝓎 Homes in Atlanta, Georgia. And here are your modern white welfare king and queen going inside of their glorified low-income housing project complex building apartment. Look at all the white people outside waiting for their checks to apply to live in low-income housing. Yes, another subsidy from the federal government that was made especially for you. In 1935, The Techwood Homes became the first public housing project building built in the United States. The federally subsidized housing located immediately northwest of downtown Atlanta and sandwiched in between the Coca-Cola Company's headquarters. Yes, this was during the cocaine era. Pause and read the rest. And to answer your question, no, black people were not allowed to live in the Techwood Homes in Atlanta, Georgia. Yes, Techwood Homes, which opened in 1936 as the nation's first federally funded public housing project, was explicitly designated to whites only. This was in accordance with the national policy of racial segregation in public housing at the time. The Techwood Homes went on to remain segregated all the way up until 1968. So if you can follow what the fuck I'm saying that we wasn't even in public housing in the fucking 60s. But y'all spew this fucked up narrative to black people, saying we're welfare queens, public housing, and all this other bullshit, when the shit just became available to us in the late 60s, early 70s. And that concludes today's episode of White History of the White Welfare Queen of the United States of America.
There is now a time limit on how long you can receive welfare benefits. So somebody like me, a single mom of 6 kids who has struggled my whole life, I've been on welfare benefits for over 13 years. Food stamps, cash assistance, Section 8, disability checks, getting my utilities paid for, you name it, I'm on it, okay? Almost $10,000 a month in welfare benefits that I receive. Well now, because there's a time limit, they are giving me 90 days. 90 days. What the hell am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to pay my rent? How am I supposed to buy groceries? How am I supposed to do anything? You are just ripping every single resource I have for my babies. I'm not going to work. I'm not getting a job. So what's gonna happen? Me and my kids are just gonna be left out on the streets? And then what? Then what are you gonna do? This is bullshit.
On a couple of my posts about white people on welfare, a lot of black folks have showed up and taught me things I didn't know, and I appreciate you for that. Know these things in part because I went to school in the 1960s and 70s in the South when racism was really open and history was rewritten to fit a lily white narrative. So let's be honest, it's still happening. And it's worse now under Trump and getting worse. And no, I never voted for that thing. But I also didn't know a lot of these things that you guys know just as part of your lived experience, because I didn't know there was Tish I needed to look for. I just didn't know what I didn't know. And I'm not excusing myself. Schools in my day and today sugarcoat history so that white kids don't feel bad. They don't go into any detail about the white bad guys, so unless we teach ourselves, we don't learn that racist indoctrination could be happening to us. They say that slavery ended. They even admit who started it and who profited, but they really skim over how it actually played out. They don't talk about how fucked up it was that white people were so fine with it that they raised their children observing and participating in the horrific abuses and the everyday casual abuses, and how they coerce slaves through risk of torture and death to cooperate with the system. They never mention that women they owned were required to raise and even breastfeed their children, and they abused those women in front of their own children while neglecting the children themselves. No wonder so many white people are so fucked up. They celebrate the civil rights movement, but not how hard white folks fought to stop it. that kind of teaching by omission grooms kids to be receptive to routine racist practices which open the door to extremism. White kids growing up thinking everything's fine, never learning to look deeper, never building real empathy or compassion, are susceptible to the quiet little dog whistles like welfare queen, America first, inner city, that subtly plant seeds of accusation in their hearts against an entire group of people that they don't ever get to know. Get curious. That means look in the mirror.
Finally, you get to see the true America. The stipulation has always been that black people are lazy, that black people are on welfare. Well, guess what? A lot of poor white people in the red states are now crying that they're not getting the EBT money from the EBT cards. Why? Because they are on welfare. They have 7 and 8 kids. Now the truth is coming out since Trump has slashed funding for the EBT and the SNAP programs. You see how many white people now are on welfare. So all this mythical stuff about black people being on welfare, oh, it's the blacks, it's the blacks, it's the blacks. Now you're seeing the real America, that it's not only black people on welfare, that there are a lot of white people on welfare also. There are a lot of white people, a lot of poor people living in those red states, and those red states that voted for Trump are now getting hit hard.